Vibrational Medicine is a podcast to bring awareness to the various natural wellness practices and treatments available. I am your host, Ash Neumeister, and these conversations are born out of my curiosity to learn more about the technologies available to us to stay in our optimal, vital, healthy, and natural state for our entire life, regardless of aging and all of the challenges of living in our modern day world. We will discuss topics covering how to stay healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Let's take a moment for one deep breath and then enjoy the conversation. Today I got to talk to Lillie Claire Love, and I am just so grateful for this conversation. We got real. We talked about some really important current issues when it comes to men and women in relationship and to healing the feminine. And, you know, it's not always easy things to talk about, but I'm super grateful for Lillie and people that do similar work to her. It's just so needed and so important at this time on our planet. So please enjoy this conversation and share it out to your friends, especially your girlfriends, and let's keep this conversation going. Thank you so much for listening and have a beautiful day. Welcome, everyone, to this new exciting episode that we're doing here of Vibrational Medicine. I'm so excited to be talking to Lillie. We were just talking before we started recording how long it's been, and I was reflecting a little bit actually on when we met was when we both did the breathwork training with Michael Brian Baker many years ago. Gosh, yeah, that
was 6 years ago.
Yeah. And so it's been really awesome, like witnessing your evolution, you know, through social media and checking in and running into each other and stuff. And so I'm really excited to hear more about, you know, what you're up to these days, and really excited for you to share your little bits of magic, not little, big bits of magic on this conversation. So I'd love actually to just get started a little bit with introducing you to the community here, and if there's anything that you want to share really around your journey at this time, you know, things that are present for you, as well as what is relevant to our conversation we're going to be having around orgasm and how to incorporate that into our lives as an essential piece of our health and wellness and different pleasure practices as well.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Ash. Yeah, it's so good to reconnect with you again. And yeah, just thinking about like, at least from my point of like who I was when I met you and where I am now, it's beautiful to have been through that evolution and, you know, have you as a mirror and see your evolution also. And yeah, for me, a little bit about me, who I am, what I do. So I am a women's empowerment coach, relationship coach, and really like the core of what I work with women around is self-love and self-worth. That's like really the core of it. And then from there, using Tantra, breath work, and many different modalities to awaken our life force, our Shakti, that feminine creative power inside of us, and actually really tap into our pleasure or our orgasmic potential and the power, the healing power that has. And I came to that work because I needed that medicine myself. I was really disconnected from really the power of it in a healthy way. I would say that I was a sexual person. I have been a sexual being, like even when I was young, but there was definitely a disconnection, and there was a way that I was relating to my sexuality, and relating to my femininity that was disempowered and was unhealthy, and that was almost like a transaction. Like I learned that women's bodies and femininity and pleasure and even orgasm almost was like something that you gave away, you used in order to get something, in order to get love, in order to get some kind of security, some kind of validation. And it's like such a deep wound that the feminine essence carries, and therefore like so many women carry. So I found the work because I needed it, and I had no intention of like becoming a coach or a teacher or a speaker or anything on that. I was an actress, and I loved playing other people because I didn't know how to fully inhabit and embody who I was. And so on that journey of like healing myself, I met myself, and my cup, I guess you could say, was like filled to overflowing, that it was like, oh, I have to share this. Like this is medicine that, all my girlfriends are asking me for now that they've, witnessed the shift inside of me and in my life and my relationships. And so it would be really selfish of me to keep that, and I had this like, I had, still a part of my voice that I was healing around like, oh, but I'm not a teacher, I'm not a coach, like I can't do that, I don't have anything of value. And it was like, Spirit was like, it's not about you. Like, get over yourself, it's not about you, like share the medicine. I was like, okay.
That's beautiful. I'm actually curious, at the beginning of your path, what was like the moment where you realized like, I need to dive deeper into this work? Like I realized that my relationship with my body or my orgasm with my pleasure is unhealthy. Like what could be some of those indications for people that might be listening to this, that maybe that's me, that I could look into this further.
Yeah. There are a few different pieces. I mean, the obvious one for me was actually in my relationship to men. So I could look at my relationships and they were not working. And so it was kind of like ending another relationship and actually meeting a new partner. That was a big catalyst for me. And it had, like, in that moment, it had less to do with in my conscious mind around like my sexuality and orgasm and things like that, but more just, it was just very obvious that my relationships with men were unhealthy and were not going to get me the kind of relationship that I wanted if I continued to operate the way that I was operating. Then it became more, as I kind of said yes to like looking in the mirror and meeting the parts of me that I was really like running from, and actually carrying a lot of self-loathing around. Then through that, I became more conscious of these other pieces of where, because I could orgasm, I could have, good sex or, but again, I became conscious of how I was using my sexuality as a way to try to get something. And And so then when I became more aware of it and conscious of it, I noticed like the thoughts in my mind when I was in sex or when I was like building up to a climax. And I noticed where there was so much wrapped around kind of like, if I don't orgasm, then I'm going to be disappointing this man. And he's not going to like me anymore. So that was an indicator, and something that really has taken time to unravel and reclaim like my pleasure and my orgasm for me. And it's something that I can share, and we get to share together, and from that place we can enhance together and manifest and all these different things, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm trying to like go back to your question.
I think I was just going to say, I think that that's so common, you know, what you were saying around women feeling like they need to fake it even, you know, and it's not necessarily like thought down on, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know, all women do that, you know, or especially because of what you're saying, you want to please the man and you want the man to feel like they are doing a good job or they can make you feel good and all these things. And so I think that's really important to highlight that that's actually not what we should be doing, you know?
Yeah, well, it points back to where we've been taught that, you know, we have to placate men and we have to take care of, we're responsible for their feelings, you know? So, and it really comes back to, where we're really taught, whether it's in relationship to a man or anything, that we're responsible for how others feel. And so we can't speak our truth.
Right.
So much of it comes back to our voice and this, you know, connection between our sacral chakra, you know, our second sex center, second chakra, which is sexuality and creativity and emotions, and really the unconscious realm, like the subconscious, where all of our kind of like, you know, belief systems and desires and dark, you know, and the shadow and maybe like dark secrets or, you know, the things that we think are not okay about ourselves, not acceptable. And really all of those belief systems that are unconscious, that are really running our lives. And then that connection to our second chakra, to our throat chakra, of our expression, our voice, our truth of like being seen, being heard, of bringing our desires into the world, you know, saying what we want, asking for what we want, speaking our boundaries, claiming our sacred no and our sacred yes, you know. And even like if you look at it anatomically in the body, when we're an embryo, a female embryo, the voice, the throat, and the vagina and the ovaries are actually connected. And then at a stage they like separate and become the ovaries and become like the voice box.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And if you like look at, you know, you look at the mouth and the jaw and the throat, it's you know, like a mirror to our vagina and our, you know, vulva and womb space.
Wow. And so it's a process of remembering that reflection and that connection and practicing too, like, you know, really getting more comfortable with speaking your truth. And I mean, I know that's been present in my own life for sure, you know, as we become more conscious of these things that are not authentically us, you know, but never having spoken that out loud before and having to do it just even for the first time, you know, or like in relationship with someone, especially, I often will catch myself wanting to say something and knowing, at least being aware, which is, I think, a big step, but still having that block of actually just opening my mouth and saying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And there's a huge like freeze response in our nervous systems. That like we could be in our head like, oh, I don't like this right now, or I want to stop, or, you know, in terms of in sex, or I don't want to go any further, or I want to slow down, or I want something different. I want him to look in my eyes, or, you know, or I feel disconnected and I want to feel connected. And there's this like freeze response of actually opening our mouths and speaking. And so it's such a tender and beautiful journey to be able to either like find a partner that you can really set up a safe container with and say, I realize that I have some kind of, whether it's like an overt trauma or just subtle trauma that we all have, and belief systems around, you know, my self-worth being tied to what I can offer as a sexual being. And I want to be in this process of kind of like unraveling all of those pieces to really reclaim my birthright, my human right to my own pleasure, my own body, and my voice. And will you be in that with me? And can we really, you know, explore in our sexuality, you know, where I can speak up, where we can slow down, and really like create that. And if you don't have somebody to do that with, you can do that with yourself, obviously, but there's obviously another layer that's added when there's somebody else there, especially in our relationship to the wounding, in relationship to the masculine, to men. You can do it with yourself in terms of like self-pleasuring and really slowing everything down and really setting aside any goal to climax. And there I want to kind of like paint a distinction between climax and orgasm as well, of like orgasm is these waves, and we can have these waves of pleasure of like rising and then falling. And climax is more like that, you know, rocket taking off or jumping off the cliff edge kind of explosion. But the more we can slow down and really like be with these waves of like pleasure rising, and then maybe it's dissipating, and really being with our breath, and really being tender with every sensation on our skin and every emotion and thought that is arising with that, you know, like what is really making space for what's really coming up and wanting to be seen and grieved and released and, you know, rewired. And then if you're wanting to do that with a partner and you don't have that partner, or that partner is not open to exploring in that way, you know, there are sexual, you know, healers and things that you could work with. And unfortunately I don't have a lot of men that I can recommend, maybe like one or two that I like, you know, personally like really feel like yes in integrity, and I feel really good about sending a woman to you. And then, you know, I work with women in that way as well, to really somatically go into the body. And because for that like freeze response to unfreeze, like for us to melt all of the protection that we've, you know, put up, and really it goes beyond this lifetime, and it goes you know, into past lives, and also into just like the collective feminine wounding of like the freeze. We have to really like slow things down and be with every kind of like micro
Mm-hmm.
moment of what's coming up, to be present with that, to feel then safe enough to finally like open our mouths and speak
Right.
our truth.
Yeah. Yeah, this is such an important topic, you know, of all of these different ways that we can work with our bodies and our minds to release these stored traumas and things that we've experienced in this lifetime and others, like you said. And especially now, it's super relevant with the whole like Me Too movement, and with women finally feeling like they do have a container to speak their truth and at least to begin to talk about, you know, things that have happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know many, many women that are going through this right now, and myself too, of really just feeling that collective wound, like you were saying. And I think I was having a conversation with a girlfriend recently, actually, and she was talking about how even though she's in a really healthy relationship and she loves this man and everything is fine, you know, between them, every time that they have sex, she feels shame afterwards.
Mm.
And she's questioning, you know, where's that coming from? And she also knows that it is most likely from trauma that had happened to her when she was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious if you have any advice or anything around that particular topic of a lot of shame that's coming up, even though, you know, some women do feel like it's their fault that these things
Mm-hmm.
happen to them, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I can't tell you how many conversations I've had since this is fortunately being talked about now, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
because before it was hidden,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's becoming okay to even have these conversations with our friends, you know, and people that we feel safe with. But some women are feeling almost like shame that they have shame,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, because they're in this
Yeah.
beautiful relationship and this man
Mm-hmm.
has never done anything to harm them,
Mm-hmm.
but they still have that coming up.
Yeah. 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 Well, first of all, you know, this woman in particular, you know, like our stuff comes up when we feel safe enough
Mm,
and ready for it. So it's like, first of all, just acknowledging like, like what a beautiful, you know, relationship and experience container to finally have like this to come up. It's
mm-hmm,
safe enough to be seen.
mm,
Second of all, shame says, you know, is like, I am bad. Like, whereas guilt is like, oh, I did something that I don't
mm-hmm,
feel good about. Shame is like in our self-worth. It's like right in our gut, in our
mm-hmm,
solar plexus. And it's like this belief that I'm bad, I'm wrong.
mm-hmm,
And the antidote to shame is being seen, like is
mm-hmm,
voicing that, is bringing it to the light, because it shame lives in the dark, it lives in the shadow,
mm-hmm.
right? And exactly of course we're going to feel shame about having shame, and then that just like keeps it in the dark,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So as scary as it is to like voice, like I have shame, that comes up around my sexuality is so important. And so if you know you
Mm-hmm,
can reach out to your sisters or or me or you, you
mm-hmm,
know, and really voice that and let that be seen, because um, yeah, bringing it to a safe place to be seen and heard and felt and loved. And it's not an emotion that is easy to feel on our own at all, and
mm-hmm.
may feel scarier to be seen and felt with somebody else, but is so healing.
Yeah.
um, and so then really like the next step is going into the inner child and really being with with her and what she's feeling, and is she carrying the shame? Is she the
Mm-hmm.
one that decided that she's wrong and that she's bad and that it's her fault?
Mm-hmm.
And in that, which is where it comes handy to have, right, like a therapist or a healer or someone or a friend with you guiding that process. But also, like, the one speaking to our inner child is like calling in that part of us that's like our higher self, or our Christ light, or just our adult self, whatever, like that unconditionally loving part of you that can be with the wounded inner child and be a safe space, like be a nurturing mother for that part of you that is holding this deep shame, this feeling of deep unworthiness, or this deep grief or rage or whatever it is,
Right.
fear.
Mm-hmm.
Really allowing her to release,
Mm-hmm.
and holding her in that, and letting your body release somatically. And that could look like, crying or screaming or shaking or trembling. And this is like a way that our body and our nervous system releases. If you, look at animals, in the animal kingdom, when, a tiger chases a deer and that deer gets away, or sometimes they like play dead. And what happens is, like, the tribe, the family of deers come around and they like stay around that being that is like disassociated from its body until it feels safe enough, its spirit feels safe enough to return to its body. And then it wakes up and it shakes and it cries and it howls and it releases that trauma from its body so it can continue in its life not carrying this. But we're not taught how to do that, and we're actually taught the opposite as humans in society and culture and our families mostly, that like don't feel that, like, just push through it, get on with it, like be a man, or don't be a pussy, or don't be a crybaby. And so we don't know as a society how, like, to hold space for emotion, and that is actually the healthiest thing that we could do, is to let ourselves and let each other release, so that we're not just holding that in our nervous systems and trying to move forward when we're actually, there's a part of us that is stuck in time. So going back to the inner child, there was one of my clients who's in her 50s, has been married since she was like 18, was brought up kind of, she calls it like a religious cult, and had sexual trauma as a child. And she said, for the longest time, for like the last 4 years, she's been trying to connect to her inner child. And she would just cry every time, like she couldn't really connect with her, and she just would cry. And then we started working together, and first it kind of was the same, she was just crying, but she could see her inner child like just sitting there, kind of like lifeless. And she just kept coming back and being with her and speaking with her and letting her know, like, I'm here with you, I'm listening, I'm present with you. I'm present with the parts of you, me, that I maybe don't like, or I don't want to feel, but I'm breathing into it and I'm here right now. And eventually she started to wake up, and she realized that she actually resented her inner child for being a sexual being, and that maybe she attracted that, she had judged her for that. And when she realized that, and she saw it from this other perspective, like, you're a child, and you are with this vibrant, alive being. And yes, sexuality is this natural innocence of aliveness and creation and
Mm-hmm.
play and joy and expression. And I'm so sorry that there were people that had this distorted relationship to their sexuality,
Right.
that they caused you harm, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not your fault.
Right.
And her inner child like woke up and came alive and is like playing, and like she's like, okay, so now we're at the point like we're getting to know each other, and she's teaching me how to actually embrace my sexuality.
Wow.
And like as a 50-year-old something who's now kind of leaving this 33-year marriage,
Mm-hmm.
that she literally just was like for his pleasure.
Yeah.
And she's like telling him no.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's really amazing. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps, bringing it, acknowledging it, bringing it to the light,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
inner child work. And then
Right.
from there, I would say like work with like yoni eggs and yoni crystals and self-pleasure and things like that. But it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
a process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the men too that are with women that maybe in this kind of stage of their life where they're feeling safe to speak these things, or they'll start crying after sex, or this is coming up. And I have a lot of guy friends that um they're aware that this is happening, so they're starting to be able to hold space for it, which is
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful.
Oh my God. It makes
Yeah.
me just want to cry. Like
Yeah.
men who can hold space and who like are also rewiring because they're healing too. Like
Yeah.
the other side of the coin is like men have been conditioned and taught that if they don't give pleasure or make someone orgasm or just like take,
Mm-hmm.
what they want, that they're not a man, and
Right.
that's tied to their self-worth too, and they're
Mm-hmm.
unraveling all of that.
Yeah.
And they're unraveling and reconnecting with their hearts and their human right to
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Yeah.
And that when a woman is feeling deeply, that it's not their fault, there's nothing wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And also that sex isn't just this thing that we like have been shown should be like in porn or Hollywood movies. Like
Mm-hmm.
sex can be awkward, and sex can be weird and like
Mm-hmm.
innocent and full of rainbow of different emotions, and it doesn't have to look like this perfect like romantic or perfect primal
Mm-hmm.
thing, but it can really be two people unraveling all of this conditioning together
Mm-hmm.
and discovering and reclaiming together.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a total reframe, of like really thinking about what's possible.
Yeah, and like what's good sex.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good if it's really messy and there's all sorts of emotions coming out,
When
and
it's real, right? When it's like
exactly.
real, when we're actually
Mm-hmm.
saying what is. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm still unraveling it and discovering with a partner right now of like the places still that were
Mm-hmm.
connected into that, like if I don't orgasm, then you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
not like me, or speaking my truth in like micro moments where I feel disconnected or I feel like afraid that you're just using me or something like that.
Right.
And really like being able to say that, and to us to like breathe into that together and grieve that together.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, uh
Wow. Yeah.
this is what this is what we really want. We want real. We want authentic and
Exactly.
vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. So true. And
That's intimacy, right?
yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sending a prayer out now
Mm.
to everyone that's listening to this. Like, may you find that partner that you feel safe with. And
Yeah.
even if it's not a partner, with yourself,
Yeah.
you know, to really start diving into this area and releasing all of that stored trauma, so that you can find the freedom and the joy and the wonder and the curiosity, you know, of what's really possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that like women's circles and like sisterhood is a place that is really safe to start to explore that, whether you have a partner or not. Like that's a place that we can come together. And it's interesting, like when I started doing my like tantra training, I was in this like room full of like 20 women giving each other breast massages. And and you know, you could like, I guess it's kind of from that like distorted, you know, point of view that we have around sexuality and objectification, that, you know, you could look from that point of view and be like if I told a guy about that, you know, one guy, you know, might be like, oh, that's hot, or, you know, like, you're a lesbians or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, I was in this room and was like, oh, wow, we've been doing this for centuries, like healing each other. And that even when it's like, it feels sexual or pleasurable, it was like this nurturing feeling. It was like this nurturing divine mother kind of energy in the room and between the two women. You know, and it's this real safe space to be able to reclaim your body and your pleasure and be seen in that. And it's just really safe. It's not like for the other woman at all. It's not for anybody else but you. And to be held in that is really amazing.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this is, you know, we mentioned in the beginning, just like pleasure practices, you know, like just putting the intention of creating more pleasure in our lives, which I really do know and believe to be one of the most essential parts of our life if we are to be a whole and healthy and happy person. You know, pleasure is essential. And a lot of us forget about that, especially myself too. Like, you know, I live in Los Angeles, I have a busy life, I'm doing all these different things, and to really, like, what is pleasure? First of all, it's different for everyone, right? And what are some things that we can incorporate into our daily lives to really create more of that for ourselves? You know?
Yeah, it can start and be as simple as like tuning into your breath and your sensations. You know, just like starting to breathe into your body and feel the sensation of touch. Feel how your clothes are touching your skin. Giving yourself like really light, slow caresses, like feeling all of the nerve endings light up on your skin and breathing into that and expanding that little bit of pleasure on your skin, expanding that like into your heart, expanding that into your whole body, bringing that pleasure into the places of tension, feeling the sun on your skin, breathing into that, like really slowing down when you eat something yummy and like savoring all of the flavors and the textures and the juiciness.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, listening to the sounds, tuning into your sensations, and your sensations are this portal into your sensuality.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's always around slowing down, for sure. You know, I definitely become aware when I'm starting to feel that anxious feeling in my chest. And I've gotten a lot I can identify it a lot faster now instead of just continuing and pushing on through.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this one moment in very particular, I was like standing in my kitchen in the middle of like a really busy day, and I was like rushing to make some lunch or something. And I was like, whoa, like I need to slow down. And like, what is something I can do in this moment to like, for me, it was in my mind to activate my feminine energy. I was feeling very masculine and driven, and moving forward day to day. And it really is as simple as one deep breath, you know, like just remembering to slow down. And how I just had this realization in that moment of like, that's power, you know?
Yeah, because it's in your power. Your breath is available to you anytime. It's
exactly free. Yeah.
And it's empowering for you to like notice, oh, I'm totally in my head. I'm totally in stress, anxiety, pushing, forcing right now. And I have the power to just take some deep breaths into my belly, into my heart, and slow down and reconnect with, you know, right hemisphere of my brain of like, maybe there's some expansiveness I can create here, some like creativity, that things could flow in a different way, that I don't have to like do it all from that force.
Right. For sure.
Other pleasure practices I mentioned briefly, like the yoni eggs and yoni one practices. And so if, you know, anyone listening doesn't know what they are, is like crystal egg or wand that women use, and they've been using. It's been found to go all the way back to like ancient China, and women in temples and royal courts in China knew this as like a secret. Like the jade egg was kind of like the main one stone that they would use, and putting it inside of our vagina, and it, you know, crystals are this amazing energetic being that brings healing. And so it was like a way to stay connected to their youth and their vitality and their creativity, and that sensual, creative, feminine power that we have. And that, yeah, it's been such a powerful, beautiful tool that I use, and that women I work with use, that like miraculous things happen. And, you know, on one level, I like to say, like, it's like, don't treat it like a magical pill and just like put it in and walk around in your day and expect yourself to suddenly be, you know, fully connected to yourself if you're coming from a place of disconnection, you know. To really like slow down with it again and make it a practice of becoming present with yourself and present with this area of your body that, you know, we're usually so disconnected from, unless we're, you know, having sex or having a baby, and even then doesn't mean we're connected to it. So really like kind of slowing down and breathing into your womb area, and connecting to your ovaries, and connecting to your whole, you know, vulva and yoni, and finding all the places where you're numb, and finding the places where there might be pain, or there might be some emotion stored, and being with that. And then the other piece of it is that it's also then this amazing ability to tap into your creativity and your manifestation magic, you know, and abundance. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to, you know, like create and manifest from this place of pleasure and play and even orgasm, you know, like.
Yeah, I would love for you to speak more on that actually, and how to do that, you know, like with setting intention, or what, you know, how you can actually start to use that energy to manifest things into your life.
Yeah, the basic I guess, formula is, yes, set an intention. So, instead of like, I'm going to say self-pleasure or have sex, because I want to release stress, or because I want to get off, or, we have like maybe these unconscious kind of intentions, or because I want to please my partner, or whatever it is, come and create a practice of self-pleasure or, sex with somebody that is to manifest. And so it could be, and have a specific thing, whether it's like a specific number that you're holding in your mind, in vision, or it's a trip, or creating your business, or manifesting a partner, whatever it is. And so you can come to that with the intention, breathe, visualize it, kind of go on a visualization journey as you're like building the pleasure and building this creative fire, and really breathing that energy up through your body, like breathing it up into your heart, and kind of then exhaling, sending it to that intention, sending it out into that thing that you're wanting to call in. And it really is like as you were saying, like the masculine energy is more like that forward, like going out, making things happen, doing. And that's important, but to balance it with this like receptive, magnetizing way of creating and manifesting. And really, like, it's so magical how doors just can open from that space.
Totally.
So that's the essence of basically setting the intention, having a visualization, and building the pleasure, and bringing that into your mind. If you do climax, bringing that intention of visualization into your mind in climax. And if there's no climax, just like really, building the pleasure, riding those waves with that intention. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a whole other form of meditation, really.
And then the yoni crystals will like enhance that practice, like 10-fold, 100-fold, because then you just have the extra like oomph of these crystal beings that are amplifying your intention and your visualization and your pleasure.
Beautiful. And you have those available on your website, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
We went so many places I didn't expect, but I'm so grateful for these conversations really coming to the forefront, and for more people talking about ways to incorporate their sexuality into their health and wellness, and that it's so essential. You can't, if you don't have this aspect of your life, balanced, or even just part of your transformational journey, it's a huge gap, and it affects so many other parts of your life.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, like, for the scientific, peeps, like, you're literally raising your oxytocin, which is the love and bonding hormone, and it's decreasing your cortisol, your stress hormone. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It balances your hormones. Like, there's so many like beautiful physiological things that are happening that back this up.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Well, I always ask everyone at the end of the podcast, what are, 3-ish practices that you have in your own life, in this realm or other realms, that support you in really maintaining your overall health and wellness. Or, those, one of my friends taught me the phrase a long time ago, like, what do you do to lift the heavies? To really like shake it up and raise your vibration.
Yeah, I love that. Lift the heavies. I mean, among all the things I would have mentioned, but my kind of like go-to things are dance.
Mm-hmm.
Like just, yeah, and like sensual kind of movement.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it could like look like just going crazy and shaking and
Yes.
dancing. But yeah, dancing is one that like really gets me out of my head and into my body.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And yeah, moves energy and like connects me back to my heart and my emotions when I'm feeling like maybe numb or disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
um I would say like superfoods and adaptogens and like
Mm-hmm.
herbs and things are a
Mm-hmm.
huge one. I had like an adrenal fatigue crash about 2.5 years ago and have been healing like my gut and my thyroid and my adrenals, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that is so connected to, like the sacred sexuality work and balancing our hormones with superfoods, adaptogens, um,
Mm-hmm.
herbs, and tonics and things like that are a
Mm-hmm.
huge one. Yeah, if anyone's curious about that, I can reach out to me as well, and I can always like provide a list of things that are
Awesome.
helpful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of traveling, and so like my suitcase is like half super
Right. Yeah.
and
Totally.
that's what like helps me stay grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And breath work, I mentioned that, but breath work
Mm-hmm.
is like it's available to me at any time, whether that is just like realizing I need to take some deep breaths
Mm-hmm.
and slow down, or really needing to move extra energy and doing like a shamanic kind of rebirth breath, like what we were trained in,
Mm-hmm.
um, or yeah, pranayama of like breath of fire is a go-to one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Alternate nostril breathing, and yeah, they're just like available at any
Right.
time that you can do anywhere, in your
Exactly.
car, on the
Mm-hmm.
plane, in your bedroom. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's immediate effect because it's, working with your nervous system. So it's
mm-hmm.
that
Yeah, you're
instant.
taking in oxygen, which is life, and you're
Mm-hmm.
expelling carbon dioxide, letting go of what you don't need, and that beautiful like symbiosis between like
Mm-hmm.
the earth and the trees of like
Mm-hmm.
taking in and giving back and letting the earth compost what's
Mm-hmm.
not serving us.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, those are very helpful. And thank you again so much for
Thank
this
you,
really
Ash.
beautiful, powerful, necessary conversation. And really just want to take a moment to acknowledge you as well for this work that you've been doing over the last, 5 or 6 years since I've known you, and what courage it probably took in the beginning to really follow that call, like you said, but then trusting spirit to know that this isn't about you, and the impact that you've made on so many people's lives. And yeah, really just grateful that you're alive to do this work.
Thank you, sister. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to post show notes, if you're wanting to find Lillie and having more questions for her. And yeah, have a beautiful day and spend some time slowing down and incorporating pleasure into your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.